Hello, my name is Connor McGoy, creator of Summit the Board Game from Inside Up Games. I'm going to quickly run over the setup for you to help you jump into your game and get playing as fast as possible. Although there are a lot of options to the game should be pretty quick to learn and pretty fast to play. I hope you enjoy. Let's get started. The first thing you want to do is decide on the mode of play, whether you're playing the competitive version against your friends or flipping the board over to play the cooperative version. The way to tell the difference will be the karma track on the right hand side for competitive, or it'll be labeled the Sherpa track for cooperative. The next thing you want to do is decide the difficulty setting for the game. If you look over on the bottom right hand side, you'll see I have chill, trying, risky, reckless, and legendary. Obviously, as that base camp is set at different difficulties, the mountain will get taller, more difficult, and gameplay will be longer. After setting your base camp at the required difficulty, you'll want to match that difficulty setting with your halfway camp. In our example, we were playing with 3 players, so I only need 1 base camp. If I was playing with 4, 5, or 6 players, I would simply use 2 base camps with tents as needed. You also have the ability to add a second halfway camp to make your game easier if you so choose. And lastly, in a game of 4, 5, or 6 players, you'll want to use the larger summit with more points of movement. These aren't needed in our 3-player game, so we'll return them to the box. After this, you're going to want to set the blizzard track marker on the blizzard next to your chosen difficulty. Again, we've set for chill in all 3 locations. As the difficulty goes higher, the blizzard track will start higher, obviously making the game more difficult. In our demo here, we're playing with 3 players, so we don't need the 4+ player blizzard icon. This token will be used if you would like to make the game a little bit easier for 4, 5, or 6 players. Next, place the numbered item tokens on the left-hand side of the board, obviously over their matching number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The dice, the active player token, and all remaining tokens can be placed to the side of the board for gameplay. I recommend taking the tile tray out of the box and placing it on the table within reach of all players. You'll then draw tiles and distribute 3 to each player. Those tiles should be kept hidden in a competitive game. Next, you're going to want to place the event cards next to the table after giving them a good shuffle and shuffling in any cards you may choose to use, whether making the game harder or easier, and be sure to include any competitive cards and remove any cooperative cards. For the karma cards, you're going to want to shuffle these as well. And again, you can choose to shuffle in the extra mean aggression cards or leave them out for your first try, as I recommend. Next, all players can either choose their characters or choose them at random, and I recommend setting them up as per page 11 of the rulebook for your first try to make learning faster and easier. All players will be responsible for tracking their own food, oxygen, weight, health, and speed. As a player loads up more food and oxygen, they'll pass weight markers, which will tell them to increase their weight in their weight track. This will affect their speed in the speed track. Be sure to calculate any weight from items when calculating your character's weight. That total amount of weight will show you where the weight track will be and how it affects your speed. All players will place their corresponding color-coded meeple in the base camp, place their karma medallion on 5 in the middle of the karma track. There is also a time of day token, which is not needed in the competitive version of play. It can be returned to the box. For the item cards, I recommend using them as they are set up in the rulebook. However, once you've learned the game, you can play as the rules suggest using a draft mechanic. When looking at item cards, there are 2 things you want to watch for. Obviously what they do and how they affect your character, but also any weight they may have. In the initial setup, all the cards will either have no weight or 1 weight. But as you get more experienced, you'll see the weights go all the way up to 3. And lastly, you'll want to place your colored flags next to the position track for easy placement during gameplay. Okay, that's how you set up the game. Now we'll get into a little explanation on how the game is played. The goal of the game is for players to race from the base camp, up through the halfway camp, to the summit, and back down again. They'll be making points for pole position for each of those 4 checkpoints. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not just getting to the top of the mountain the fastest, it's also getting back down. On top of that, the score from these 4 waypoints will be added to your score from the karma track at the end of the game, and it's the total points that wins, not necessarily first across the line. Once everything's set up, all players should check their character's speed to see who is fastest, and thus the first player. However, if you've used my quick setup guide at the back of the rulebook, you'll notice you all start at 5. As per the rulebook, in this instance, of the tied characters, the player who is eldest will start. On your turn, you basically have 3 options of what you're going to do. The most common one being moving and placing tiles as needed. The second one will be skipping your movement to discard all tiles and draw a fresh tile hand. And lastly, to skip your movement to attempt the removal. I'll go into these in more detail now. The first one, moving your current speed and placing tile, players will be playing their tiles to construct a new mountain with every game. There are 3 different types of tiles, the best of which is the neutral tile, with the healthy green trees and the brown rope. There is no effect to this tile. Next are the icy tiles. As you can tell, they just contain more knots to move across the same distance. So in essence, they're slowing your character down. Lastly are the thin air tiles, which you will see have the yellow ropes and the leafless trees. As soon as your character enters a thin air tile, they have 1 oxygen requirement, meaning their character will have to use 1 oxygen from their supply. That oxygen is paid upon entering the tile, and will not need to be paid again until you're entering a new tile or returning to this one. So if I was to spend a turn or 2 here doing something else, I would not need to spend more oxygen. Also, any weight loss due to oxygen use is immediate. So in theory, if I was to lose enough oxygen and my weight dropped enough, I might gain speed immediately. Very obviously, tiles must always connect long side to long side, or short side to short side, never short to long. Also, because players are climbing a mountain and laying ropes as needed, they can only place tiles as they move onto them. So for example, as the blue player Connor, I'm moving up the mountain, counting each knot as a point of movement, and seeing that my speed is currently 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would not be able to place another tile as I have no movement remaining, and I can't randomly place tiles in other places to block players. Again, remembering to use the oxygen upon entering that thin air tile. Another important thing to know about rope movement on the mountain, in the competitive version of the game, is that you will need permission to pass each other on the mountain. So, if Kathy, the green player, was to go after I was done my turn, and she had 5 movement, she would have to ask if she wanted to come up the rope behind me. She would simply ask permission, at which point I would have the option of saying yes or no. If I said yes, I would gain 1 karma for being a nice guy, and Kathy would be able to pass me 1, 2, 3 playing tiles from her hand as needed. If, however, I was not being so nice, and when Kathy asked, I refused, I would lose 2 karma, 1, 2, and Kathy would either have to go another route or choose something else to do with her turn. An important thing to remember is the karma track is like a resource. As you are nice, you'll be scoring more points, but once you get to 12, you won't receive any more points. You are able to continue playing nice cards to help each other, but you'll not score more than 12. However, if you're being especially mean and falling low in the karma track, you will need to play nice cards to fill that card up a little bit before you're able to play mean cards again. In my example right now, let's pretend I have 0 karma. I would not be able to play a karma card costing me 2 or more karma, as I'm only able to drop 1 level. That also applies as a character is trying to pass me. In my example from before, when Kathy asked permission, I would not be able to say no, as I cannot lose those 2 karma. So, saying yes, she would pass me, and as she passes me, I would gain 1 karma. Or I'm simply throwing out my tiles and drawing a fresh hand of 3. And lastly, attempted removal. During the game, you may be encumbered or hurt, receive a token or a card that you don't like, and you may choose to then spend a turn to get rid of it. To do this, you will skip your movement and roll the event die. If you roll a mountain, the negative token or card will be removed. However, if you were to roll a blank, that card or token would stay and you will have wasted that turn. After choosing from one of those 3 options, you're going to roll both of the dice, basically giving the mountain its turn. Although they can be rolled at the same time, always resolve the blue die first. If you roll a mountain, you will draw 1 card from the blue event stack. Reading the entire card aloud, it may affect you, everyone, or the mountain. If you were to roll a blank, do not draw a card. The next thing you're going to do is check the weather die to see what you rolled and what kind of weather your character encountered. 5 sides of this die affect only the player who rolled them. The sun means it's been a beautiful day and you will not have to consume any food. If you roll any of the single snowflakes, you will consume 1 food by dropping it on your player mat. If you're to roll 2 snowflakes, your character will consume 2 food. The last side affects all players at the table who aren't in camp. If I was to roll the blizzard, when I was up the mountain, the blizzard track marker would rise by 1 level, and all players not in camp would consume the required resources. In this example, only myself. If later in the game, the other characters are somewhere climbing the mountain on their tiles and a blizzard is rolled while I'm in camp, they would eat, and I would not. In a 4, 5, or 6 player game, if you've chosen to use the blizzard token, then they will move 1 at a time up the blizzard track. When they are joined up, then all players not in camp will consume the required resources. After resolving the dice, you will draw new tiles up to your tile hand limit, as well as new karma cards. You will then pass the dice and the active player token clockwise for that player's turn. If you ever begin your turn at camp, be it the base camp or the halfway camp, you can choose to skip your movement and heal up to 3. Or you may skip your movement and load up supplies as necessary, as much food and oxygen as you wish. The camps can never run out. Lastly, you can choose to draw 3 item cards, equipping those as necessary, and shuffling the others back into the deck. Be sure to remember to affect your weight as necessary. A player may stay in camp for as long as they wish, doing any of these actions and repeating them if needed. Be sure to remember that players in camp roll the dice, but are not affected by any food requirements, including the blizzard. If for some reason in the game, you either want to drop an item that you didn't want, maybe leave it for your descent or for another fellow climber, you simply take that item and tuck it under the board on the left-hand side. Take the matching number item token and place it on your current tile. Any player passing through that tile may pick up that item to gain its effects. Now let's go into the karma track with a little bit more detail. I mentioned before that it's like a gas tank that can be filled up, but can also run out. Use it wisely. Looking at the karma cards, there are two icons you're going to notice, the halo and the pitchfork. Those icons are seen on your cards as well to give you a hint of whether they're going to be helpful or hurtful. Below that is a symbol to tell you what the card is affecting, whether it's affecting health, game components, food, oxygen, or something else. You'll also see if it has a clock icon, it can be played at any time, including off turn. If there is no clock icon, the card will tell you very specifically when it can be played. When a karma card says target, it always means someone else at the table. You cannot target yourself unless the card specifically says that you may. And lastly, you'll see what you'll be gaining or losing on the card, whether you're gaining +1, +2, -1, -2. Some cards will have no numerical gain, but the card overall will be advantageous to you. Also, you'll see some that have either a positive or negative use. You'll obviously score points depending on how you use that card. Now that I think you have the setup and understand how the game is played, I'll play a couple quick hands so you can see how it works in action. Starting as the blue player, seeing I have a speed of 5, plus my trekking poles is 6, I'll start making my way up the mountain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using my oxygen, dropping my weight. 6. Now I'll roll both the dice and consume 2 food. Luckily, my character consumes 1 less food than the weather die roll, only consuming 1, and no event card is drawn. Passing the dice to the green player, it is now their turn, and I draw 3 tiles back up to my tile hand size. I also recommend not playing any karma cards during the first round or two so that players can learn the ropes. Green's tiles aren't quite as good as mine, so I think she's going to follow me up the mountain. Moving 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, using 1 oxygen, which lowers her weight. As her weight lowers, her speed increases. Now she can go up to 6, and we've only moved 4 spaces. 5. She can't ask to pass me because we can't share a knot. Her turn is over. She'll roll both dice, getting both an event and the blizzard. Always resolve the blue die first. Kathy has drawn spoil. All players lose 1 food. This does not affect players' health. Kathy, Connor, and Vince all lose 1 food. When Connor lost that food, his weight dropped and his speed increased. He'll get that extra speed on his next turn. Next is the blizzard. Both Connor and Kathy are out of camp, so they'll both have to eat the 1 food. Vince is warm and safe in camp. Kathy is dropping another food because of the blizzard, and her weight will decrease. Blue will also be dropping a food because he's only protected by his rolls. Kathy does not need to draw any tiles as she did not play any, so she simply passes the dice and the first player token to Vince. Vince's tiles are pretty awful as well, but as a strong character, he might not mind blowing through some of his oxygen. He's going to start another route just for fun. He's moving 5, 1, 2, using an oxygen. 3, 4, using another oxygen, which drops his weight, which increases his speed. 5, and thanks to his speed gain, 6. Another oxygen is used as he's entered a 3rd thin air tile. Now he's going to roll both of his dice, draw an event card. Exposure. Vince has to lose 3 health or miss his next turn. He can ignore this card if he has snow goggles or extra layers. He has neither of those items. He's going to choose to lose 3 health. 1, 2, 3, dropping his speed by 1. He had a little bit of luck by rolling the sun, so he consumes no extra food this turn. He'll draw 3 new tiles, and then pass the dice and the first player token to Connor. It's now Connor's turn again, and he's able to move 6 plus 1 from his trekking poles, moving 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hitting the sign is arriving in halfway camp, and he can simply go into his color-coded tent. If he would like, he can continue to run right through camp, and he would still score for it, but I would recommend stopping to resupply. At the end of his turn, he's going to roll both dice, getting no event, and ignoring the food, thanks to his ability, but also the fact that he's in camp. Well, thank you so much for watching the game setup and overview of the competitive mode. There should be another video uploaded shortly of the cooperative mode. Please feel free to reach out to me at InsideUpGames on social media and use the hashtag SummitSurvival so I can follow along with your expeditions. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn my game and for supporting me and my small company. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.